No, no, as long as I can hold on. Is there anyone here who doesn't know me?
Don't say it.
Juan Bruce-Novoa was a special colleague and neighbor for 20 years in Irvine. However, our friendship dates back even further, to the 1980s. In 1987, Juan and I participated along with Luis Leal in a wonderful conference on a short story in Morelia, Michoacán, with a side trip to that town with a wonderful sounding name, Tzintzuntzan. We met again in 1988 and 89 in San Antonio and Austin, respectively, with American Mexicanists and Mexican authors and critics in an ill-fated attempt to establish a binational organization devoted to the promotion of Mexican culture. Fortunately, that project materialized in the 1990s at UC Santa Barbara, thanks to the boundless energy and supreme organizational skills of Sara Bovet. Strongly supported by Juan and his UCI colleagues, Kobe, that's his basketball nickname, Kobe, Sefami, we enjoyed attending most of the meetings at Irvine as well as at Santa Barbara because of the high intellectual level of the papers delivered and, perhaps even more important, the unique collegiality that has prevailed to this day. I particularly recall one meeting in Santa Barbara when I appreciated very much Juan's positive analysis of my one and only book of fiction, Un Tercer Reino Viejo. I think it was at the same meeting that Juan really endeared himself to me by repressing a grimace when he was startled to hear Bunny Berrigan's classic recording of I Can't Get Started With You, followed by Sing and Sigh's off-key version of the same song. The significance of the repressed grimace is the fact that Juan was a former musician, as well as an art connoisseur and a highly cultured scholar of both Mexican and Chicano literature. Although we occasionally disagreed on critical interpretations of certain works, I always admired him for his original and independent points of view. We also bonded through our memories of pre-Smog Mexico City. However, today I'm going to concentrate on a description of our pre-Thanksgiving 2007 trip to Mexico City and our post-Thanksgiving trip the same year to Guadalajara. Transportation to and from LAX was provided 3 times by Marianne and once by our son Alan. The motive for the November 14th to 17th trip to Mexico City was the celebration of our friend Luis Leal's 100th birthday. In order to arrive at the first event, we youngsters had to endure the hardships of Mexico City traffic, made even more difficult by demonstrating itinerant vendors who were dancing nude in the middle of San Juan de Letrán Street between the Palace of Fine Arts, Bellas Artes, and the main post office. They were protesting the government decree banning them from the Centro Histórico. Since careful planners, Juan and Seymour, please excuse the shift in narrative voice, that's experimentation. Since careful planners, Juan and Seymour had set out from their Hotel Diplomático on Insurgentes with 2 hours to spare, they arrived in time to to take pictures of the dancers, enjoy a light supper at the original Sanborns, buy the latest issues at the philatelic window of the very dimly lit, almost completely closed down post office because of the protesting dancers, and make their way up the slippery marble steps of Bellas Artes to the third-floor theater. After Juan and Seymour read their tributes to Don Luis, listened to several others, and admired Sarah Polt while dodging the bullet fired by Beatriz Espejo, what is the most negative thing that you could say about Luis Leal? They left Bellas Artes with their mutual friend, poet Alberto Blanco, and began to search for a taxi on the dark, deserted Avenida Juárez. They finally found one 3 blocks away, in front of the new Hotel Sheraton that had replaced the famous Hotel del Prado, mortally wounded by the 1985 earthquake and subsequently torn down. They were fortunate to have Alberto with them, because every time the driver made a wrong turn, Alberto would steer him back on course. All three were relieved to arrive safely back at the Hotel Diplomático. The second day of tributes to Don Luis was held at the library of the National University, but the highlight was the ride back to the hotel at 9 p.m. After listening to a morning, afternoon, and evening of tributes to Don Luis, Juan, Seymour, and Ramon Ramirez, Luis Leal's former student who now teaches in Cal State Long Beach, unobtrusively slipped out. Each one positioned himself on one of the 3 parallel streets leading away from the library with the hope of stopping a safe and unoccupied taxi. Ramon was the first to call to the other 2 compañeros from a small yellow Volkswagen taxi, a dangerous kind, and assured them that it was safe because he had studied the driver's face. It's true. Juan and Seymour did their best to keep from laughing all the way back to the Diplomático. The third Luis Leal Centennial Day was celebrated at the Universidad del Claustro de Sor Juana, about 10 blocks south of the Zócalo. Although Jacobo argued with me, he thought it was east of the Zócalo. The culmination of the 3-day event was the closed-circuit TV conference with Don Luis, who was comfortably watching in Santa Barbara. He was thrilled to see the arrival and distribution of the 1,500-page testimonial book, and to hear a great mariachi group play his long-distance requests for Cielito Lindo and La Adelita. The taxi ride back to the Hotel Diplomático was uneventful. Change scenery. The motive for the November 24th to 27th trip to Guadalajara was the annual International Book Fair. Juan, Seymour, Sarah Polt, and Norma Klant had organized a session commemorating the 60th anniversary of the publication of Agustin Yanez's novel, Al Filo del Agua, The Edge of the Storm. The double room was packed, not because of the name Canistas, but because the very famous columnist and author Carlos Monsiváis's name was on the program. Carlos ran into Juan and Seymour in the lobby of the Hilton Hotel on the first night of the feria and insisted on having coffee with them before the opening banquet, so that he could show off his memory of the lyrics of of the American hit tunes of the 1940s. Chattanooga Choo Choo, At Last, Let's Call the Whole Thing Off, and many others. By the time he finished singing, he was surrounded by autograph seekers, causing the three literati to arrive late at the banquet. In spite of Monsign's unexcused absence at the annual session 2 days later, the audience was very attentive and appreciative. A rural school teacher from Yahualica, the model for the novel's fictitious town, spoke enthusiastically about the good old days before the arrival of the highway, which also brought binoculars. She displayed two beautiful photos of the Yahualica monument honoring Alfilo del Agua and gave copies to each of the four UC Mexicanistas. It was truly my most unforgettable pre- and post-Thanksgivings of all time. Made even more so because I was able to share them